Waters by Madeleine L'Engle, Chapter 3, Japheth's sister Yalith. When Yalith left her grandfather's tent, she hurried toward home, near the center of the oasis. At her side she had a small pouch of darts, similar to Japheth's, but instead of the miniature bow she carried a small blowpipe. The arrows were tipped with a solution which would temporarily stun but not kill a predator, even one as large as the manticore. The manticores were strong and bad-tempered, but not intelligent or brave. She feared the manticores less than she feared some of the young men in the town, and she kept a dart in her hand in case she needed it. After leaving the grazing grounds around Lamech's tent, she walked through one of his groves that led her onto the desert of white sand, lapping against brown grasses. Wherever there was not enough wells to provide for irrigation, the desert took over, but she preferred walking across the desert to the dusty, dirty paths of the oasis. Stars were bright against the velvet black of the sky. At her feet, a large late beetle hustled to burrow itself under the sand until morning. To her right, high in the trees of Lamech's groves, the baboons were chittering sleepily. She looked toward the horizon, and on an outcropping of rock, similar to the one the earthquake had made when Sandy and Denny's met Japheth and the mammoth Higgaion, she saw the shadow of a supine form. She looked to make sure it was a lion, then called softly, "Ariel!" The creature rose slowly, languidly, and then leapt down from the rock and loped toward her, and she saw that she had been deceived in the starlight, for it was not a lion, but one of the great desert lizards called dragons by most people, although its wings were atrophied, and it could not fly. She stood frozen with anxiety on the starlit sand, her hand holding one of the tiny arrows. As the lizard neared her, it rose straight upward to a height of at least 6 feet, and suddenly arms were outstretched above the head. The tail forked into 2 legs, and a man came running toward her, a man of extraordinary beauty with alabaster white skin and wings of brilliant purple. His long hair was black with purple glints, and his eyes were the color of amethysts. "You called me, lovely one?" He bent down toward her tenderly, a questioning smile on his lips, which were deeply rosy in his white face. "No, no," she stammered, "not you. I thought you were Ariel." "No, I am Eblis, not Ariel. And you called, and here I am," his voice soothed. "At your service. Is there anything you want?" "Oh, no. No, thank you, no." "No baubles for your ears? Your lovely little neck?" "Oh, no, thank you, no," she repeated. Her sisters would think her stupid for refusing her offer. The Nephilim were generous. This Nephil could give her everything if he had offered, and more. "And all of a sudden you have changed," he said. "You were a child, and now you are not a child any longer." Instinctively she folded her hands across her breasts, stammering, "But I am a child. I'm not nearly 100 years old yet." He reached out one long, pale hand and softly pushed her starlit hair back from her forehead. "Do not be afraid of growing up. There are many pleasures ahead for you to taste, and I would help you enjoy them all." "You?" She looked startled at the glorious creature by her, light shimmering like water from the purple wings. "I, sweet little one, I, Eblis, of the Nephilim." No Nephil had paid attention to her before. She was too young. Then she saw in her mind's eye the strange young giant in her grandfather's tent. She was no longer a child. She did not react to the young giant as a child. There are many changes to come," Eblis said, "and you will need help." Her eyes widened. "Changes? What kind of changes?" "People are living too long. El is going to cut the lifespan back." "How old is your father?" "He must be, close to 600 years, middle-aged." She looked at her fingers. 10. That was really as far as she could count accurately. "And your grandfather, Lamech?" "Let's see, he was very young when he had my father, not quite 200 years old. He too has lived for very long. His father, Methuselah, my great-grandfather, lived for 969 years, and his father was Enoch, who walked with El, and lived 365 years, and then El took him." Involved in the great chronologies of her fathers, she was not prepared for him to unfurl his great wings and gather her in, enveloping her in the great swirls of purple, touched with brilliance as with stars. She gasped in surprise. He laughed softly. "Oh, little one, oh, innocent one, how much you have to learn about men's ways, and about El's ways, which are not men's ways. Will you let me teach you?" To be taught by a Nephil was an honor she had never expected. She was not sure why she was hesitant. She breathed in the strange odor of his wings, smelling of stone, of the cold, dark winds which came during the few brief weeks of winter. Enveloped in Eblis's wings, she did not hear the rhythmic thud as a great lion galloped toward them across the desert, roaring as it neared them. Then both Yalith and Eblis turned and saw the lion rising on its hind legs as the lizard had done, leaping up into the sky, a great tawny body with creamy wings, gilt-tipped, unfurling and stretching into a vast span. The great amber eyes blazed. Eblis removed his wings from around Yalith, hunched them behind his back. "Why this untoward interruption, Ariel?" "I ask you to leave Yalith alone." "What's it to you? The daughters of men mean nothing to the seraphim." Eblis smiled down at Yalith, stroking his long fingers delicately across her burnished hair. "No?" Ariel's voice was low. "No, Seraph. A Nephil may go to a daughter of men. A Nephil understands pleasure." He touched a fingertip to Yalith's lips. "I would teach you, sweeting. I think you would like what I can give you. I will leave you now to Ariel's tender ministries, but I will see you again." He turned away from them toward the desert, and his Nephil form dropped into that of the great dragon lizard. He loped away into the shadows. Yalith said, "Ariel, I don't understand. I thought I saw you on the rock. I was sure it was you, and I called, and then it wasn't you, it was Eblis." "The Nephilim are masters of mimicry. He wanted you to think it was I. I beg you, little one, be cautious." Her eyes were troubled. "He was very kind to me." Ariel put his hand under her chin and looked into her eyes, clear and still childlike. "Who would not be kind to you? Are you on your way somewhere?" "Home. I took Grandfather Lamech his nightlight, but Ariel, there is a strange young giant in Grandfather Lamech's tent. Japheth carried him there. He has a terrible sunburn. He can't be from anywhere around here. He says he is not a giant, and I have never seen anyone like him. He is as tall as you are, and his body is not hairy, it is smooth like yours, like the Nephilim, and his skin, where it wasn't burned red, was pale, not white like the skin of the Nephilim, but pale and tender like a baby's." "You seem to have observed him carefully," Ariel said. "There's never been anyone like him on the oasis before." She flushed, turned slightly away. Ariel asked, "What is being done about his burn? Does he have fever?" "Yes. Higgaion is keeping him sprayed with cool water, and they are going to ask a seraph what to do for him." "Adnarel?" "Yes, the scarab beetle. Good. He is not one of you, this young giant, and he is not one of the Nephilim. Their skin burns white and whiter in the sun, like white ash when the fire has burned fiercely in the winter weeks." The creamy wings trembled, the golden tips shimmering in the starlight. "If his skin burns, he is not of the Nephilim." "Nor of you. Does he have wings?" "No. In that he is like a human. He seemed very young, though. He is as long as you and thin." "Did you observe his eyes?" She did not notice the twinkle in his own. "Gray, nice eyes, Ariel, steady, not burning, not giving out light, like yours, more like human eyes, mine and my parents and brothers and sisters." Ariel touched her gently on the shoulder. "Go on home, child. Do not fear to cross the oasis. I will see that you are not harmed. You and Eblis, thank you." Like a child, she held her face up for a kiss, and Ariel leaned down and pressed his lips gently against hers. "You will not be a child much longer." I know. He touched her lips again lightly, and a moment later a large lion was running lightly across the desert. Yalith turned onto a sandy path through a field of barley. At the end of the path was a stone road cutting through white buildings of sun-baked clay, low buildings built to withstand the frequent earth tremors. Some of these low buildings contained small shops for baked goods, for stone lamps, for oil. There were shops with hanging meat, shops with bows and arrows, shops with spears of gopher wood. Some entryways were curtained with strands of bright beads, which tinkled in the evening breeze. Out of one of these came a Nephil, his arm around a young woman who was gazing up at him adoringly, leaning against him so that her rosy breasts touched his pale flesh. Her glossy black hair fell down her back, past her hips, and the eyes with which she regarded him were the deep blue of lapis lazuli. Yalith stopped in her tracks. The girl was Mala, Yalith's sister, the only girl besides Yalith to be in the home tent. Their two older sisters were married and lived in another part of the oasis with their husbands. Mala had been away from the home tent a great deal lately. Now Yalith knew where she had been. Mala saw her younger sister and smiled. The young Nephil smiled too, graciously acknowledging Yalith. Before they came out of the shadows, Yalith thought he was Eblis, with a sense of shock and betrayal. But in the full starlight she could see that his wings were much lighter, a delicate lavender. She could not tell what color his long hair was, but it too was lighter, and seemed to have an orange glow. He had a sinuous, snake-like curve to his neck and hooded eyes. He smiled again, tenderly. "Mala will stay with me this night. You will let your mother know." Yalith blurted out, "Oh, but she will worry. We are not allowed to stay out at night." Mala laughed joyously. "Ugil has chosen me." Mala laughed joyously. "Ugil has chosen me. I am his betrothed." "Ha ha ha!" Yalith gasped. "But does mother know?" "Not yet. You tell her, little sister." "But shouldn't you tell her yourself, you and Ugil?" "But shouldn't you?" Mala's laugh pealed again like little bells. "Ha ha ha ha! The old ways are changing, little sister. This night I met Ugil's brethren." The Nephil stretched a soft wing around Mala. "Yes, little sister, the old ways are changing. Go and tell your mother." Yalith turned and they watched her go, fingers waving at her in farewell. At the end of the street she heard footsteps and turned to see a young man following her. She reached for a dart and put it in her blowpipe, but he disappeared around a corner of a building. The low white buildings gave way to tents, each tent surrounded by the land of the dweller. At first the small plots of the shopkeepers, then groves and fields, sometimes many acres. Along the path she saw sheep, goats, camels grazing. Grapes were ripe on the vines. Her father's tent was a large one, flanked by several smaller tents. She hurried into the main tent, calling out to her mother. We'll pause there.